Hello.
Hello.
Fuck is this? Like that.
Let me pop you out. You want to tell me what happened last time?
No.
I think you remember. What was the last thing that happened? Do you remember?
um, he fucking. I think it was just that Watchman was born,
And
right?
what happened when he was born?
I don't remember. Like in what way?
He was a ghost fire, and then what happened?
I don't
Shillian
know.
got crucified. Yes, I fed the dog.
Oh, you did. Okay,
Yep.
we just got back.
Yeah, she's been out.
Okay, thanks.
He got crucified, and then what happened?
I mean,
He grew bigger, and it became a fire that killed everybody in the temple.
right. I forgot that was him.
Where do I want to? All right, so that chapter. Let me sit up a little. That chapter ends with bones and skulls were strewn all over the interior of the temple of the Crown Prince. White No-Face cackled uncontrollably as he turned and left the temple. The raging fire hadn't stopped at the temple's doors. Even the frenzied, disfigured victims outside had been reduced to dried corpses and piles of waste. As if blind to the devastation, White No-Face tread across the ashen charcoal remains. The entire forest, no, the entire mountain, trembled in agony and grief. Countless black shadows flew upward into the night sky, souls of the local dead scrambling in terror to escape their resting place, but a strong gust of wind scattered them in all directions. A gigantic mass of black clouds slowly rotated above the temple of the Crown Prince, rumbling restlessly. It resembled a colossal, demonic eye. This was the birth of a great evil, the signs of a wrath ghost taking form. Chapter
So,
101. What?
so Shalian doesn't like actually know that's Watchman being born, right?
Shillian is unconscious now.
No, not right now. I mean, like in present day.
No, he doesn't know that he was the ghost fire.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
He just knows that he was Hong Hong Er, who he caught at the parade, and he knows that he was in the army. That's all he knows. So Shillian was unconscious for that as well. So now we're on chapter 101. With neither grief nor joy, white cloth brings calamity to this world. Shillian couldn't tell if he was awake or asleep. If he was awake, then he was reacting to nothing in the outside world, and had no memory of anything. If he was asleep, his eyes had been open the whole time. By the time he came back to himself, White No-Face had strapped the black sword to his waist like an elder giving a reward to a child. "This is my gift to you," he patted the hilt. His voice was gentle and thick with deeper meaning. "It will certainly prove much sharper than any of the others you have collected, even the ones from Junwu." Shillian let him hang the sword as he willed, neither speaking nor retaliating. Retaliation would be pointless. He put on a new set of robes in that state. Armed with a new sword, he dragged himself outside, in what felt like a newly born body. He walked out of the temple of the Crown Prince and toward the darkness. White No-Face called out after him, "Wait." Shilian paused in his step. White No-Face soundlessly came to his side and placed a white silk band in his hands. "You forgot this." It was the silk band he had once used to cover his face, the one that had also been used to bind him. Shilian wobbled down the mountain alone. Day had already broken. The sun had come out, but Shilian didn't feel warm at all when it shined on him. On his way down the mountain, he saw a little trickling stream, clear and lively. He approached the stream's banks. The water reflected his appearance. Shilian stared at his pale face. The face was smooth and fair, without a single cut to be seen. The neck was the same, which meant the chest and the abdomen and other places were all healed. He only looked for a while before he couldn't bear the sight any longer. Lowering his head, he cupped some stream water in his hands to wash his face and drink a few mouthfuls. He drank and drank, until he happened to notice something nearby. Slowly he looked up. Not far from the stream, there was a corpse lying on the shore, slumped next to a giant boulder. Judging by the clothes, it was the corpse of the buff street performer. The man hadn't descended the mountain. He died on the road. There was a particularly obvious blood stain on the giant boulder. Whether from pain or fear, it looked like he had smashed himself against it until he died. The corpse was already rotten and emitted a foul stench. Half of the body was soaking in the water of the stream. Although the body didn't move, the little deformed faces growing on its half-rotten face, were still squirming. Shilian knelt by the stream and puked his guts out for over an hour, heaving until blood came up. After descending the mountain, he walked through the city for a long time, aimlessly wandering the main streets without a destination in mind. Suddenly a hand gripped his shoulder and yanked him into an alley. Shilian looked around and saw an incoming fist before he even glimpsed the other's face. "Where did you run off for so long?" Behind the fist was Feng Shin's furious expression, but by the time Shilian saw, he'd already been knocked to the ground by the punch. Feng Shin hadn't expected to knock him down so easily. Confused, he looked at his own fist, then at Shilian on the ground. Before he could think to help him up, Shilian had already crawled back up by himself. Feng Shin's face changed, but in the end his temper was still flaring. "You've got such an attitude, dropping only a word before running away and disappearing for 2 months. Did you know how worried their majesties have been?" Shilian wiped away the splattered blood on his face from his nosebleed. "I'm sorry." Seeing that he was making things worse by wiping, Feng Shin heaved a heavy sigh. "Your Highness, forget it with the apology. There's no need between us. But you... What happened to you? Why were you gone for so long? Can't you tell me?" He noticed the black sword hanging at Shilian's waist. "And where did you get that sword?" Shilian wanted to tell him, but then he remembered the argument he'd had with Feng Shin before he left, and the doubtful expression on Feng Shin's face, and that brought to mind the experience he never wanted to think about again. So he just repeated, "I'm sorry." The two returned to the hideout, and when the queen saw Shilian, she hugged him and wept. The king looked like he'd aged quite a bit again. Before, it was a matter of finding white hair among the black, but now it was a search for black strands among all the white. However, he wasn't blowing his top for some reason, and he only spoke a few words before falling silent. The three of them were probably afraid that Shilian would run away for another 2 months if he was provoked again, so they were very careful with their words and gestures around him. Let me drink. Feng Shin. After a meal so simple it was crude, Shilian untied the black sword on his waist and passed it over. "Take this sword. Pawn it." Feng Shin noticed that the hand holding the sword was shaking, but he couldn't guess what was causing it. "Why?" "Didn't you ask for money?" Shilian said. A flash of hurt suddenly crossed Feng Shin's face, and he shook his head after. "I don't need it anymore." Shilian didn't speak another word. He tossed the black sword to the side and stopped caring about it. Then he flopped over and fell asleep. When Shilian came back this time, He tried to act like nothing had happened in the hope that everything would return to normal as soon as possible, in the hope that he could return to the person he once was. Soon, he and Feng Xin went out to perform in the street. Feng Xin was still worried at first and told him, "Forget it, just rest for a couple more days." "I've already rested for about 2 months," Shilian said. "If those street performers keep coming to cause trouble, it'll be easier to handle it with 2 people. "They stopped coming a while ago," Feng Xin explained. It wasn't because the buff street performer had died and there was no one to lead, but because Feng Xin had been settled there for a while now. When he first arrived, everyone had regarded him as a novelty, but that novelty had worn away with the passage of time, and watching him now was no different from watching the other local buskers. Feng Xin had lost his competitive edge, and the other street performers stopped looking for trouble now that he wasn't a threat. Since everyone made the same amount of money, it was fine. But now, no matter how hard Feng Xin shot his arrows, no matter how expert his skill, the audience and the rewards they paid for his efforts was less than half of what it once was. In fact, it was less than 10%. After working for over half the day, Feng Xin was exhausted and sweating profusely as he sat down on the roadside. "Let me go up," Shilian said. "Nah, don't worry about it," Feng Xin replied. However, Shilian didn't bother listening to him. The passers-by became interested again at the sight of a new face. "And what special skill do you have, lad?" Shilian didn't respond. He picked up a branch and started to perform a sword play routine. Though he wielded a mere branch, the technique was beautifully performed, and the sound of wind being cut carried the sharpness of the sword's intent. A few audience members did him the honor and cheered. Feng Xin looked on from one side, his expression complicated. He only watched for a bit before he turned his gaze away. Shilian didn't feel shame at all, nor did he feel any burden. He just kept deliberately and gracefully swinging his branch. Suddenly, someone in the crowd began to jeer. "It's so boring! What a pathetic act! Who wants to watch you fucking poke around blindly with a tree branch?" Feng Xin immediately jumped to his feet and shouted, "You watch your language!" Shilian faltered and looked over. There was a man in the crowd who was munching on a melon and spitting out the seeds. He was obviously there to watch a show. "This ancestor's here to watch a street performance. I'll say whatever I want to say. You're here to earn our reward. So what do you care what I say?" the man yelled back at Feng Xin. "Switch to a real sword. Use a real one, and Granddaddy will consider granting you some seeds." As soon as he started yelling, others in the audience followed suit. Feng Xin was furious and was just about to strike out when a white shadow flashed past. Shilian was already standing next to the heckler. He grabbed the man and threw him high into the air. The strength he exhibited was incredible, and the heckler's melon rinds tumbled to the ground as he was thrown meters away. The crowd was left to gape in open-mouthed shock. The man landed with a heavy thud, bleeding from his orifices and screaming horribly. However, Shilian wasn't done, and he went over to seize the man once again. His voice was flat and emotionless. "There are no real swords here, but I can really take your life. Do you want to see that act?" The audience broke away and fled in terror. "Somebody help! Murder!" Feng Xin was even more shocked. "Your Highness!" Shilian ignored him and prepared to throw the heckler another several meters away and let him fall wherever. But Feng Xin hurried over and held Shilian down, even forgetting to hide his identity as he roared, "Your Highness, snap out of it! You're going to kill him!" Shilian's eyes were burning with black flames. He smacked Feng Xin's hand away and pressed the man to the ground. The heckler passed out cold. Feng Xin bent down and was just about to check whether he was breathing when he heard someone yelling sharply at the end of the street. "It's them! Over there!" Oh no. The Yongyan soldiers had come. Feng Xin bolted instantly, but Shilian still stood there staring at the Yongyan soldiers like he was contemplating starting a fight with them. Feng Xin turned around and pulled him away. "What are you still standing there for? Run!" The two of them ducked and hid under cover until they could make an escape and return to their little safe house. The moment they passed through the door, Feng Xin started yelling right in front of the queen. "Why would you do something like that?" Once, Feng Xin would have never dared to be so unruly before the two majesties. But a lot had changed. They had all been ground down for so long. Shilian turned to the queen. "Go to your room." "My son, what?" the queen started. "Go to your room," Shilian shouted. The queen didn't dare press further and retreated to her room. Shilian turned to Function. What did I do? You were going to kill that man, Function said angrily. He didn't die, Shilian countered. And so what if he did? Function was dumbfounded. What? What did you say? What do you mean, so what if he did? That filthy peasant was asking for it, Shilian said. And since he asked for it, I gave it to him. Was I wrong? Stunned by Shilian's new vocabulary, it was a good moment before Function said, He was causing trouble. But you didn't need to kill him. Smack him around a little and let it go. He didn't deserve to die over some petty words. Hold on, I gotta let Venus out. Venus, you're ruining the tension. Shilian cut him off. Of course he did. He dared to say it, so he had to pay the price. How could you say something like that? Function asked, voice thick with disbelief. Like what? Shilian asked. I've never heard you call someone a peasant like that before, Function said. What are you trying to say? Shilian said. It's not like I'm a god. Can't I be angry? Can't I hate? Function didn't know how to respond. A moment later, he arduously squeezed out a few words. That's not what I meant, but still, you don't need to. Shilian didn't want to listen anymore and stopped talking to him. He stomped into his own room and slammed the door. The moment the door was shut, he screamed and threw himself onto the bed. He was fooling himself. Utterly fooling himself. No matter what, it was impossible to pretend like nothing had happened. It was impossible for him to return to who he once was. That evening, someone knocked on his door. Shilian assumed it was Function, so he ignored it. The queen's voice sounded from the other side a moment later. My son, it's your mother. Let mother come in and take a look at you, all right? Shilian had just wanted to lie there without moving, but after staying there for one more moment, he still got up and opened the door. What? He asked tiredly. The queen stood at the door holding a plate. My son, you haven't eaten yet, have you? Shilian stared at her and endured the urge to speak for a long time before he finally forcefully swallowed the words that were already rolling up in his throat. Even though I haven't eaten, I don't want to eat anything you made. He moved aside to allow his mother into the room, and the queen placed the plate on the table. Look. Shilian looked, and he got so angry he wanted to laugh. What is that? The queen spoke as if she were offering him treasure. This is lovebirds upon a branch meatballs, and this is blooming flowers and full moon stew. The lovebirds looked like they were dead, and the full moon was full of craters. Shilian had to interrupt her. Why do you name these things? Don't dishes always have names? The queen said. That's for imperial dining. It's in a palace, Shilian said. Ordinary people don't give names to dishes. Imperial dining, palace, ordinary people. The queen remained quiet for a while, then smiled. Well, dine imperially to give a dish a name. So just take this as a wish for good fortune. Come, try some. Mother spent a long time making this for you. And then she passed a pair of chopsticks over. Shilian didn't smile, nor did he touch the chopsticks. The queen sat there smiling for a while before her face gradually fell. My son. Shilian's tone was brusque. What? Why are you fighting with Function again? The queen asked. Shilian didn't want to explain, and he didn't have the energy to do so regardless. You two just stay in your room and relax. You don't need to worry about these things. The queen hesitated for a moment. Mother knows she probably shouldn't say this, but that child, Function, was the one who looked after us during the many days that you were gone. Mother, what are you trying to say? Shilian demanded. My son, don't be angry. I'm not trying to blame you, the queen said quickly. I'm really not. I know you're having a difficult time as well. I'm only saying that young Function has always followed us, followed you, and it isn't easy for him. I can sense that he's stayed with us until now, not because he didn't want to leave, but because he still cares about your friendship. Shilian leapt to his feet. Who has had it easy? Has it been easy for me? Mother, can you please stop asking questions? Can you please not involve yourself in things that you don't understand? When she saw that he was running out the door, the queen started panicking and got up to chase after him. "My son, where are you going? I'll stop talking. Mother won't say anything else. Come back." "I know," Chilean exclaimed sharply. "Everyone's having a hard time, but don't worry. I'll go right now to make things easier for everyone." The queen couldn't keep up with him, and it wasn't long before she was left behind. Chilean returned later that night carrying a few sacks. When he opened the door, no one had gone to bed. They were all waiting for him, their expressions sullen. Chilean shut the door with a backhanded push. "What's up?" It seemed that the king had already lectured the queen, and the rims of her eyes were red. When she saw that Chilean had returned, she let out a long sigh of relief, and forced a happy smile. "My son, you've come back. I won't ask you any unnecessary questions from now on. Just don't leave us so suddenly. Mother will definitely listen to you if there's anything." Everyone was scared that if he turned around and left again, he'd be missing for another 2 months. "You all think too much," Chilean said. "I wasn't going to leave. Just go and rest." Function waited until the king and the queen had gone to their room. After a moment of silence, he began to speak. "Even if I asked where you went, you wouldn't tell me, right?" Chilean didn't reply, just tossed the sacks to the ground. They made a crisp clinking sound as they landed. "What's this?" Function asked. Chilean opened the sacks and dumped them out. From within tumbled a large pile of shining gold and silver wares that nearly brightened the entire house. Function instantly stood up. "You! Where did these things come from?" Chilean didn't bother to look up as he replied, just sat on the ground and counted the haul. "There's no need to be like that. I paid a visit to a big household in the city. Relax, no one saw me." Function's eyes were round and bulging. "You!" Remembering just then that the king and queen were in the next room, he lowered his voice. "You stole them?" "You don't need to look at me like that," Chilean said. "Everyone's having a hard time. This will make things easier." "You still shouldn't have stolen them," Function exclaimed. "We can just busk." "And how much do we earn from killing ourselves performing on the streets?" Chilean said. Function staggered back a couple of steps. It was the first time Chilean saw him look like he was about to faint. He finally steadied himself and took a moment to make sure he hadn't heard wrong. Then he mumbled, "What made you this way?" Chilean looked up. "What way?" Function was furious. "I don't want to lecture you, but look at yourself. Look at what you've become. I've already stopped asking about the robbery, so how did things get even worse?" Chilean snorted. "I knew it." "Knew what?" Function asked. Chilean rose to his feet. "I knew that robbery thing was still on your mind. You wanted to ask me, but you didn't have the heart. You thought about it 1,000 times, right? Don't obsess about it anymore. I'll tell you." Step by step, he closed in on Function. "It's true. I robbed someone." Function was forced to take a step back. "You." Then he advanced a step and hissed in anger. "We've been passing our days in such hardship, and for what? If you were willing to do those things, then we could have done them already. Why suffer until today? What are you doing, throwing away all your efforts? Are you still the same Royal Highness I used to know?" "You're right. Why have we suffered until today?" Chilean said. Function was taken aback, and Chilean continued. "What was I like in the past? I didn't talk back when I was cursed at, didn't fight back when I was beaten, and always overestimated myself. I was so determined to save the common people. What kind of person does all that? A dumbass. Do you think being a dumbass is better? Do you think that's the kind of person I should be? Are you going to be very shocked if I'm not?" Function was stunned. "Are you crazy? Why do you have to say it like that?" "You're wrong. I'm not crazy," Chilean said. "I've just suddenly come to my senses. Now I know that the past me was the crazy one." "Why are you being like this? When did you become this way?" Function mumbled. I really don't know. Why did I follow you all this time?" "Then stop following," Chilean said. Function couldn't wrap his head around that. "What?" "I said don't follow me anymore," Chilean repeated. Then he slammed the door. 4 hours later, there was finally some rustling outside the room and low voices speaking. It seemed Function was bidding farewell to Chilean's mother and father. Function's voice was extremely low. The queen's voice was choked with sobs, and the king's didn't say much, but there was a lot of coughing. The door opened a moment later, then closed. Function's voice vanished, and the sound of his footsteps grew more and more distant. Function had left. Julien was still shut in his room, emotionless and expressionless. A moment later, he closed his eyes. He finally left. Ever since Mu Qing left them, Julien had been terrified of this possibility. That one day, Function would leave too. But he'd become so scared of it, that he could no longer endure the torment. Rather than dragging it out, slowly grinding away all the kindness and friendship, like sharpening a knife until nothing remained, until they loathed the sight of each other, it was better to make it explode now. Before Function left, Julien had been afraid. Now that Function was gone, he wasn't scared anymore. But even though he no longer felt fear, he felt a deep agony. Julien had initially held a 1 in a million bit of hope at the bottom of his heart. He'd hoped that Function would still stay, even if Julien admitted he had done things he shouldn't have, even if he became the worst version of himself. After all, the two had never left each other's sides since he turned 14, and Function was selected to be his personal attendant. They were master and servant, but more than that, they were friends. And Function had no one to care for him aside from the Crown Prince either, or at most, him and the King and the Queen. But Function had already left. Julien had already guessed it would end like this, and he could understand it completely. He just couldn't bear it for the moment. Let me drink. Just then the Queen's voice came from outside his silent room. "My son, I'm so sorry." Julien couldn't immediately think of a response. He crawled out of his bed and opened the door, then went out. "It's got nothing to do with you," he said tiredly. The King and Queen were both sitting at the old, creaky table. "Father and Mother dragged you down and made you do bad things for our sake. We even made you and Function argue," the Queen said. Julien forced a smile. "What bad things? Aren't tales and legends full of stories about stealing from the rich to help the poor? Since Function's gone, he's gone. This is good, actually. With him gone, things will be more relaxed. Relaxed on both sides. You two just focus on healing. Tomorrow we can buy the best medicine." However, the King glared at him. "I won't use that money." The Queen tugged at him covertly. "Then what do you want?" Julien demanded. The King coughed a few more times. "You go chase after Function and bring him back. I don't want this money." Although the Queen was still tugging at him, she agreed. "Yes, why don't you chase after Function? He's your most loyal servant and your best friend." "The loyal servant is no more," Julien said. "We have money, so just use it. Don't ask about anything else. I already told you. You don't understand these things." After a long silence, the Queen said, "I'm so sorry, my son. Mom and Dad can see that you've been struggling very hard on your own. But we're only mortals, so we can't help you at all. You have to take care of us on top of everything else." Julien was out of energy to say more, so he placated them with empty words of comfort before sending them back to their room. To try to clear his mind, Julien unwrapped his white silk band and stripped off all his clothes, then took a quick bath before passing out in bed. He slept so deeply that when he woke the next day, he wondered blearily, how come Function didn't wake me? It took some time before he remembered that Function had left. Julien flipped over and sat up, falling into a daze. But there was something else. Even if Function had left, what about his parents? Why hadn't his father and mother come to rouse him either? Normally, he would have heard the King coughing by now. The sound had never ceased, so why was it so quiet today? Julien felt uneasy. He put on his clothes and got out of bed, then reached for his silk band, but it was missing. He pushed open the door to the room next to his. "Mother, have you seen my—" The moment he opened the door, his pupils instantly shrank to 2 minuscule dots. He had found his white silk band. The silk band was hanging from the beam. 2 unmoving figures dangled from it. Their bodies had long since gone stiff. They were the bodies of his father and mother. Julien wondered if perhaps he was still dreaming. He staggered, reaching out to support himself on the wall, but he was swaying so badly that he couldn't catch himself and slipped down along the wall instead. He sat on the ground, hands covering his face. He couldn't breathe. He choked on air. He cried and laughed, laughed and cried. I, I... He rambled incoherently to no one, then he added, it wasn't, no, I... Wait, you can't, I... In the end, he couldn't even form a complete sentence. He turned around and screamed, smashing his head against the wall over and over. He should have known. His father was such a conservative traditional king, and his mother couldn't bear the sight of her loved one suffering, let alone suffering for her sake. They were both nobility, raised in prestige. Was already a miracle that they'd hung on for this long. Julian smacked his head against the wall hundreds of times. Function! My father and mother are gone, he mumbled. No one was listening. Only then did he realize he needed to get his parents' corpses down. After he lowered them, Julian acted like he had nothing left to do, and walked around the house. He saw that there were a few plates of horrid-looking food on the table, long cold. They were the dishes that Julian had made the queen take away the night before, without eating a single bite. Now he pulled them over absent-mindedly and ate everything, not daring to leave behind a single leaf, afraid to miss a single grain of rice. After he ate, he heaved and began to vomit. Suddenly, Julian grabbed the white silk band and threw it over the beam, then put his own neck through this knotted loop. Waves of suffocation assaulted him, yet his mind remained clear. Even when his eyes filled with blood, even when his collarbones cracked, he still remained conscious. As he hung there, the white silk band abruptly loosened on its own. Julian fell heavily to the ground, and in the midst of his dizziness, he saw that the silk band had actually started moving by itself, with no breeze to aid it. It was coiling like a venomous snake. It had conceived its own spirit. It had been dyed with Julian's blood, had hung 2 royals to death. If Julian could die, then it would have been 3. Saturated with such deep resentment and evil, it would be stranger if it didn't turn into a spirit. The little spirit had only just arrived in the world, and didn't understand at all that it had been born from such despair. It happily drifted over to the one who had given it a soul, like it was hoping for a gesture of affection. However, Julian had no eyes for it, and he clutched his head and roared, "Somebody! Somebody come kill me!" He could only pray that someone would come right that second to take his life and help him break free from this endless pain and torture. Just then, in the far distance, he heard the roaring of gongs and sound of drums. Julian panted harshly, his eyes bloodshot. What is that? He wondered. Something drove him to his feet, and he stumbled outside to look. He walked for a long time before he realized that it was the sounds of celebration. They were commemorating the imperial palace's construction in the newly established royal capital of the newly established kingdom of Yong'an. The entire nation had joined in jubilation. All the former citizens of Shenle were now cheering for Yong'an. On the main street, everyone's faces bore bright smiles. It was such a familiar sight. Julian remembered now. This was how the people of Shenle's imperial capital had cheered during the Shengyuan heavenly ceremonial procession. Julian staggered back to the cottage and sat listlessly on the floor. Why did he have to witness the laughter and cheers of Yong'an people when the corpses of the king and queen of Shenle lay at his feet? Julian buried his face in his hands, crying and laughing. A moment later, he giggled. "Don't think it'll be that easy for you." Memories flashed in his mind of a voice telling him, "Human face disease is resentment. This is how you create human face disease." A savage light glinted in his eyes, and his voice softened. "I won't let any of you off so easily." The expression on his face was like he was both crying and laughing, like joy and sadness mixed together. Using the wall as support, he slowly rose to his feet. "Yong'an forever peace? Dream on. Keep dreaming forever. I curse all of you. I curse all of you. I want you all to die, all of you, to the last." Julian laughed and rushed forth like a whirlwind. When he passed the mirror, he suddenly paused and whipped his head around. His reflection had already changed completely. He wasn't wearing his white cultivator robes, which were threadbare from the wash. Instead, he was wearing snow-white funeral robes with expansive sleeves. His face was no longer his own, but a half-crying, half-smiling mask. Julien would have once screamed in horror at the sight of himself like this. However, the Julien of today wasn't scared at all. He laughed maniacally and ignored the change. He stumbled to the door, crashing through it before breaking into a dash. The former imperial capital of Shenle was now nothing more than a field of ruined wreckage. There were still some who lived near the wreckage, residents who had been lucky enough to survive, and refugees who had nowhere else to go. Ever since the plague of human face disease had erupted and the imperial city had fallen, the once glamorous capital was subject to frequent sinister chilling winds. Today they seemed especially cold. The few disheveled beggars who had remained were fleeing, watching the skies as they ran. They sensed that something ominous was approaching, and knew better than to linger in the streets. Drink. The battlefield sprawled in front of the broken imperial city gates. Not many dared to visit it. Now there was only an old cultivator, scurrying around trying to catch some lost wandering souls. He stuffed them into his sack once they were caught, ready to take them and tie them into lanterns. As he darted around, the old cultivator unexpectedly discovered that a strange, white-cloth figure had appeared at the edge of the battlefield. Truly strange, truly peculiar. The man was wearing white funeral robes with expansive sleeves, and he had a band of white silk tied to one arm. The white silk band floated in the wind like it was alive. On the man's face was a ghastly white mask, half of it crying, half of it smiling. The old cultivator shuddered violently, and before he knew why, he was fleeing. His legs had already carried him away from the battlefield. He stopped before the fright had left him completely and looked back. The white-cloth man didn't speak a single word as he strolled across the battlefield. Chilling wind whipped around him, and with every step he trampled the bones of those who had died in the war. Countless souls of the dead were struggling and wailing on this soil. Even the air was black from resentment. "Do you hate?" the white-clothed man asked coldly. The dead souls wailed and cried. The white-clothed man took another few steps. "The people you swore to protect, the people for whom you swore to die, they have now become the people of a new kingdom. Do you hate?" The wails of the dead souls now had shrieking mixed in. "They've forgotten those who died on the battlefield, forgotten your sacrifices. They are cheering for the ones who stole your lives away, the white-cloth man said slowly. "Do you hate?" Amidst the shrieking they came howling and snarling. The white-cloth man called out sharply, "What's the use in screaming? Answer me, do you hate?" The battlefield's air began to echo with innumerable voices of resentment and agony. I hate. Kill. I want to kill them." The white-cloth man opened his arms towards them and extended both hands. "Come to my side." He then made his vow, saying the words slowly and clearly. "I promise, the people of Yong'an shall never know peace." The shrieking, the howling, the snarling, it shook the ground and crashed the heavens. The souls of the dead had answered him. Fallen Shenle soldiers mingled with those who had died from human face disease, and in that sky choked by black mist, they took shape. The old cultivator witnessed the whole thing from afar in terror. This is... In an instant, only 3 words appeared in his mind. White-clothed calamity. Suddenly, the white-clothed man heard a young man's voice. "Your Highness." He looked back, only to find that a black-clad young man was already standing there. And then the young man bowed his head and bent one knee to the ground. That's where that chapter ends.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that one's real rough, bud. Those are probably the roughest 2 chapters. It's still, we still got some way to go, but those are the roughest.
That the ending reminded me of that like text meme that it's like, "Where's your anger? Rise, rise," and it's like, "Dad, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, basically. Yeah, the fucking Function not leaving him telling Function to go, Function obeying that and leaving, and then the day after his parents killed himself, and then he's like, "Function, my parents are gone." and no one was there to hear it.
Yeah. What? Why would they take his fucking? Why would they kill themselves with that thing?
They're
That's
too bored.
fucked
They're too
all.
poor to buy other rope. They just saw the band and they were like, "All right."
They're like, you know what? My son's sleeping. Let's take
They just
this.
had. They didn't have anything else to. You think they're gonna?
That's
You
crazy.
think they're gonna gather
Dude,
up like
stab
$5 to go
themselves.
get a rope to
Stab
hang themselves?
themselves. Stab themselves.
No, they wanted to go like peacefully. Like I feel like if he saw them covered in blood, it would be worse or something. Or in their mind, it would be worse.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
was
can you imagine?
fucked.
No, picture this. Can you imagine they decide to stab themselves and they're like, what can we use to stab ourselves with? They pick
And
up
they use the sword.
they pick up the black sword Fangshin. That's where he got Fangshin, by the way. He's been walking around this whole time with that fucking sword.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fucked up.
Yeah, fucked up.
Um,
Did you expect them to die this chapter? I know I've shown
no.
you them dying. I've shown you them dying like how Roye was born, but I was like, I wonder when he
I
thinks
don't
this
even
is gonna happen. You
remember
don't even
that.
remember
I don't
that?
even
When I
remember
was
that,
first
dude.
reading, I showed you that.
I don't remember that.
That's
It's been so
awesome.
long and
That's
so
awesome.
much has happened.
You know that
I
they
don't
died, right?
remember. Yes, I knew that they died. I
Okay.
didn't know how they died or when it would happen.
In
At
season
first,
2, they show a clip of them, like, their feet hanging. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
right, right,
yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking like whatever it was, it like I thought they were going to leave first because his dad was so pissed off about
Yeah, yeah.
him stealing
Can you...
and that they were going to get
The
themselves killed.
whole time, Function never left him. He told Function to leave. That makes me insane. And Mooching just being like, you left soon after me, right? And Function, like, inside is probably like, yeah, I probably should have stayed, but in the moment, he
He
told me to
literally,
leave. He's so... he's so ex-boyfriend core. And Shilian being like, deep down, he wanted him to stay, and that's why Hua Chung being so devoted is, like, so important to him. Because Hua Chung would stay even if he was ugly.
yeah, yeah. Even
Ugh.
if he was ugly.
Showed his ugly side, you know.
Yes, I know what you're
It makes me
saying. I
insane. It makes me
know, I
insane.
know. And it's diabolical is what it is.
Also, while fucking Shilian was getting stabbed, Function got dumped by his baby mama. So funny. She got pregnant and ran away. And then Mooching helped her give birth a few months after this. Insane. The timeline is crazy.
It's literally like functions like, wow, we both went through some really tough shit before he. It's like, no, bud, it's not comparable, I don't think.
I'm
Oh,
I'm gonna like I guess this is a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. I guess
huh?
it's a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. They don't know. Mooching and Function
Right.
don't know.
I assumed. I assumed. Um, which is in fucking same.
Yeah, the only people who know, Shulian, Hua Cheng. Shulian doesn't know that Hua Cheng knows,
Yeah.
and
Um,
Bai Wushang, the white bitch.
the white bitch.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember reading the stabbing scene. I think I got spoiled that the stabbing scene happened, so I was reading that and I was like, this just sucks. And then I got to this chapter and I hadn't been spoiled by this chapter, and I was like, this is the
I feel
worst
like
one.
this
This is
can
the
be
worst one.
worse than
Yeah.
the stabbing because like the stabbing's just like
The stabbing happens so fast
fucked up.
and you're so like in it, but then you have to like wake up with Shilian like right after, like it's like the
Right, and you
morning
like
after being
he's
like sexually assaulted, and he's like
yeah, he's
just sitting there on the bed. Like it's awful.
right, right.
And he
Yeah.
doesn't tell anybody. And like I vividly remember reading it and being like the point where I got like I like had to put it down and like started crying was when he was drinking from the stream and he looks up and that fucking guy is dead because he fucking killed himself and he'd been drinking this bloody stream water and those fucking faces were on his face were taunting him. I was like, this is too much. I have to stop right now. You
Yeah,
can just
I
like
mean, like the whole
picture waking up, you're in this daze, you go to like splash water on your face, you look up and there's like a corpse with like flies and it's a guy that you almost killed also. Like
it's the guy that stood up for you.
it's the guy that stood up for you and
And
and you like killed him in a competition before, like he was dying
yeah,
already. Yeah. That's crazy.
I mean,
How did you
it was
think
just worse. Like,
how did you think
just
Function was going to leave?
I don't know.
Did you think he was gonna
I
he was gonna
assumed
get fed up?
Shaylan just would no. I just assumed Shaylan just wasn't going to tell him regardless. Like I knew that wasn't the
Yeah, yeah,
outcome
yeah.
because if he did tell them, I don't think he would go.
Oh no,
Um,
no, no, no. Yeah,
right,
no
right.
way he would fucking leave.
So,
But he's like he like
I just
has this
thought like
whole embarrassment of it and like this
right,
trauma of it.
exactly. That's exactly why I'm like, this is awful.
Yeah. But like
Because it's
before, like
just
when you were
so
thinking
real.
like before when we were reading the story and you're like, all right, Muching and Function have to leave him at some point, and then we got to Muching and I was like, what does he think Function is gonna do? Like, does he think Function's just gonna get fed up and leave?
I don't think like in my head I was like, he's not gonna get fed up. I just think like something similarly to mooching, like something's come up. I don't think like at first I was thinking like maybe he was going to like leave with his baby mama
Yeah, baby
and
mom.
then before anything got any further like she was like get
Ditched
out
him.
of
Yeah, yeah,
here
yeah.
and so he was like well I can't go back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would make
That's what I
sense.
was thinking but
It kills me. And
it's
so
just
in the
worse.
original like web version when she first published this, that wasn't how he left. I think I forget how, but like she like added in more stuff to that he told him to leave. Like I think Function just left out the door originally and then she was like no, he wouldn't do that and Chilean told him leave. Don't follow me anymore.
That's fucked up,
It's
dude.
fucked.
Imagine I can't like them not knowing currently is a good thing
Yeah. Yeah.
because like that guilt is insane.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um I really didn't expect his parents to kill themselves.
I can't believe you did. I can't believe you forgot that because I was like,
I
all right, well, he's
forgot.
already spoiled on this. I should have.
Yeah, I
I should
forgot.
have.
It was a long time ago. I mean,
It
when
was. It
you
was like
started reading it, it was
2021.
years
Yeah.
ago. It
No.
was years ago. I was doing other shit.
Right. Other shit
It's
happened.
been years. Life has changed.
And remember, Pei Ming was like, "Oh, this Right Silk band is so useful. I'll have to make my own." And Chilean was like, "No."
I
And
don't think he could have
He also asked
done.
him how he made it, and Chilean was like, "No, there's a reason I don't tell people that." Yeah. And now we get evil Chilean for a little bit. Now listen, this is after his first banishment. He rises again one more time and gets banished again one more
That's
time
so
before the
funny.
the show starts.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So, we got to see how that happens. Yeah. The whole flashback this time is fucked up, so we're not through it yet. Yeah.
Huh?
And you thought Beef Leaf was bad.
Well, that whole fucking scene was crazy.
Yes,
Okay,
of course it was.
like,
It's awful. We still don't know what happened to
I'm
Windmaster.
sorry. Like, I'm sorry. Like, oh my god. Yeah, that's Also
This is
that.
what like cemented. This is why I love Chilean so much. That like this just cemented his abandonment issues, and then he's like so like cavalier about it now because he's been through so much, and he's like, whatever,
Yeah,
I've already
yeah,
been through the worst of it, it can't get worse. But in deep
right.
down he's like, I want someone who will never leave me, and then he has Hua
Yeah.
Chang, and that's his blessing. That's why it's called Heaven Official's Blessing. He's his blessing.
Dude, no
Dude,
way.
dude, all right, let's do something
Yeah.
else.